When I was 19, I got shot while walking to the gas station. I died on the operating table and was resuscitated. Upon awakening in the ICU after that initial emergency surgery, I saw a dark, shadowy figure at the foot of my bed, next to my mom. It appeared to be wearing a wide-brim hat and a coat with a tall collar. It had no distinguishable features aside from those. I tried to point at it, but I was restrained because I started ripping out my tubes coming out of anesthesia. I asked, "Who's that?" as I continued to point. My mom got that weird feeling that would make her eyes go wide and give her goosebumps, something I had seen before as a kid. I could see her feel the chill go up her spine as she straightened and turned to look where I was pointing. It's just you and me and the nurse, honey." As I asked my question, I remembered that nobody else would be able to see him, and as my mother spoke, he just tipped his hat to me and disappeared. Fast forward a few days, they're preparing me for another surgery in my room. I guess the ORs were overbooked, so they were trying to save time. The two ladies that were there left my room to attend other matters, leaving me with one guy. I hear him tell the others, "Go on ahead, I got him." He begins pushing me to the OR by himself. It's nighttime and the hospital is all but empty. Each hallway was bare as could be, save for random singles all in a hurry to get where they're going. Then we turn one corner and the hallway is lined with all these people. Only one guy in a lab coat and a couple in scrubs. The rest were all plainclothed people. The medical personnel were talking and looking at each other. The rest, probably about 20 or so people, all turned to look at me simultaneously. They were lining both sides of the hallway as I was being pushed down the middle. They all stared directly at me as we passed one another. "Who are all these people?" I asked. Again, as I asked my question, I realized the answer. As I begin to notice that they were all translucent, the guy pushing me confirms, "It's just you and me, buddy." I was going to the store about 10:30 p.m. when my car overheats. I live in a very rural area. I pull over, let it cool down, check the radiator, and drive a couple more miles, and it overheats again. At this point, it's after midnight, and I am not too far away from my house. It's about 1.5 miles. It's a pretty night and just a little chilly, so I decide instead of risking hurting the car, I'll just walk home. The road I live on is a very rough mountainous road made of dirt, and I was not far from it, so I strike out not too worried because I knew why the car overheated and I needed a walk anyway. I walked down the two-lane highway, then 2/3 or so of the way down, there was some moonlight, enough to where I didn't need a flashlight. I start seeing something coming up the neighbor's driveway and hear faint steps on the gravel to my left. It's walking right up that driveway out towards the main road where I am walking past. My first thought is, okay, one of my neighbors heard or saw me walking down our road in the middle of the night and think I'm messing around with them, casing them or something. And at any moment, I expect to see a flashlight, a gun, or a combination of the two, and maybe some questions. But then I realize what I really am seeing. There's this man walking towards me, except I can see through him. It's kind of like Predator in the beginning, where it took on the texture of the surrounding trees. But as it got closer, it was very much a man, a little bigger build than me, but the same height, and wearing what I thought was a plaid lumberjack-style shirt and denim pants, and he had longer hair. He walks out of the driveway within about 30 feet, and he comes alongside me and walks beside me for about 100 or maybe 150 feet, 30 feet to my left, along the split rail wooden fence. When I get to the end of that fence, he stops and puts his arm up on it and just stares at me. I didn't say a word. I just kept walking, the hair on my head standing on end. I saw the man. I also saw through him. He deliberately came down that driveway to meet me on the road and walk beside me, watching me. The look he had was sad, or like he wanted to tell me something but couldn't find the voice. So I keep walking and I'm terrified to look back. And I just keep thinking to myself, what the heck, what the heck, what the heck did that just really happen? I was never scared really, just more so in disbelief of what I just witnessed. I began to get really disturbed by it as I got closer to my house. It's creeping me out more and more. The next morning, I'm in the kitchen telling my dad about it. How I've always believed in aliens and UFOs, but never really ghosts, not in the slightest, and he's looking at me skeptically for sure. But then he wanted to know exactly where I saw the ghost. Suddenly, it dawns on me. I remember him telling me about a year ago, before I moved back into the house, that one of the neighbors we barely knew had killed himself at that house down the driveway where that split rail fence is. Up until the other night, I thought all paranormal activity was outright BS. I can only guess it was that unfortunate soul. My mother, sister, and I live in a very old house. There were three situations that passed the line of easily explained for me. The first time, when I arrived home from school one day, I was completely alone. I went into the bathroom, and while I was on the toilet, the bathroom door, which I had left slightly open because I'm a real class act, just slammed shut by itself. This could have been an air pressure thing. The place was drafty as hell. What I can't explain is how the door locked itself. It had one of those old deadbolt style locks that required one of those long stemmed antiquity keys to lock and unlock. I don't know if it was easy to operate because we didn't have the key and never had. I slammed that door countless times and it had never locked before. After several hours in the bathroom, a neighbor came over to attempt picking the lock, and when this failed, he tried to break it in. He kicked the door once and was getting ready to hit it again when there was this audible click and it just swung open. The second time was when my mother, sister, and babysitter, the owners of the house, and myself all saw a figure we interpreted to be a taller than average woman in a full-length dress with long, straight, blonde hair. Mom saw it first in her bedroom once, and in the living room in broad daylight another time. She said nothing to anyone because the rent was cheap, we were broke, and she didn't want a couple paranoid kids asking to move out. The babysitter, who was a family friend, reported seeing a woman sitting on the couch swing through the living room window, but found nobody there when she walked out the front door. She saw someone similar in the backyard on another occasion, but we had neighbors, so I have to wonder it might have been them. When I saw it, though, I had been asleep, and I awoke to find someone standing over my bed. No creepiness, no dread or anything, it was just the lady standing there. There was a definite chill in the air. She turned and left. My mom had a friend who was slightly similar in stature and appearance, so I assumed it was her. I got up and went into the hallway, and there was no one there. When I woke my mom, she said her friend Sue was not staying with us that night. I didn't think of it as a ghost at the time, just something weird. It was 5 a.m. when this happened, so I just stayed up after that. It wasn't until a year after we moved out that Mom raised the possibility of there having been a ghost. She mentioned something about seeing someone, and I described what I saw. Her description matched mine. After that, we asked other people who had stayed with us and got the account from the babysitter. Her description also matched ours without prompting from Mom. We were renting the place from the owners who were friends of my parents, and they also admitted to thinking the place was haunted when we asked them a couple years later. They didn't bring it up at the time because they thought they were nuts for thinking so. It's the same tall blonde woman. My sister claims to have seen something, but she was in kindergarten at the time, so I have to wonder if she was dreaming. Her description also matched ours, but she related it to some time after hearing our tales, so that memory could have been colored. The third weird thing was that the place was just generally weird. There was a certain dread about the house that I honestly can't explain away with bad architecture and low-budget decor. People did not like being in the house for very long. It was always cold 365 days a year. The AC was rarely on during the summer, but in the winter we would crank the furnace and still have to start a fire in the living room to keep warm. The place was big, drafty, and old, but it had a new furnace, and it should have made some kind of difference. Nobody would go into the basement for any reason. I don't think I ever got more than halfway down the stairs. And even my dad found excuses to avoid going down there to check on the whole woefully inadequate furnace situation. Mom had the washer and dryer set up in the kitchen to avoid going down there. When my friends agreed to stay the night, they asked to go home before bedtime. I should stress this was absolutely not a spooky looking house. It's bright red on the outside, well lit inside, cheerful looking, and not at all a house you would think looked haunted. Whenever I've driven by since, up to this day, I've never seen the place without a for sale sign out front.